Think about yourself always. Know thy inner compass. Life isn't about reacting to the noise of the world. It's about tuning in to the quiet signals of your own values. If you don't take time to think about yourself, the world will do your thinking for you, and it often doesn't have your best interest in mind. Guard the gate of your mind. We are bombarded by distractions, by social contagion, by the ceaseless lure of comparison. Thinking about yourself means pausing often and asking, is this thought, this pursuit, this ambition truly mine? Or was it planted there by someone else? Savor solitude. It's a strategic asset. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's where clarity lives. Some of the greatest minds in history, Einstein, Buffett, Sen, knew that reflection is the birthplace of wisdom. Thinking about yourself isn't self-indulgent, it's strategic. Be your own case study. Observe yourself with the same curiosity you might bring to studying a great investor or thinker. What drives you? What depletes you? Self-awareness compounds. Define success on your own terms. Don't outsource your definition of a good life. Thinking about yourself means asking not just what you want to do, but why. What's enough for you may look like too little or too much to others. That's irrelevant. Make peace with imperfection. When you examine yourself honestly, you'll see flaws, fears, contradictions. Embrace them. It's only when we stop pretending to be perfect that we begin to grow. Be intentional with your time. Thinking about yourself demands that you treat your time as sacred. If you don't prioritize your own needs, you'll be running someone else's race. And you might win, but find yourself at the wrong finish line. Reclaim your attention. We live in an economy of attention theft. Every app, every algorithm, every urgent notification is stealing slices of your mind. Thinking about yourself is the quiet act of reclaiming your attention as the most valuable currency. Don't neglect the soul in the pursuit of strategy. Self-reflection isn't just a performance upgrade, it's spiritual maintenance. Don't just think tactically about yourself. Think deeply. Ask the questions that don't have immediate answers. Live congruently. The greatest reward of thinking about yourself is the alignment that follows. Your choices, your words, your priorities, they start to reflect the same inner truth, and that kind of harmony is rare and powerful. In the hurried rhythm of modern life, we are often swept up in currents not of our own making. Expectations, obligations, and distractions whisper constantly, trying to shape who we are. But there is a deeper voice beneath the noise, a quiet inner compass that speaks not in shouts, but in murmurs. To hear it, we must first pause, and in that pause we reclaim ourselves. We tend to overvalue external validation, mistaking applause for meaning. But the applause fades quickly, and the achievements that once thrilled us often feel hollow. When we spend too long chasing what others admire, we lose the thread of what truly moves us. To rediscover it, we must turn inward, not in vanity, but in truth. There's a form of wisdom that can't be taught by mentors or books. It's self-knowledge hard, won, and often inconvenient. It requires us to confront the difference between what we've been conditioned to want and what we actually yearn for. That difference, though subtle, defines the boundary between a borrowed life and an authentic one. When we ignore our inner compass, we may appear successful on the surface, but feel estranged from ourselves. This dissonance is not always loud. Sometimes it's a gentle fatigue, a quiet sense of misalignment. Over time, that quiet unease becomes unbearable. Realigning with our inner truth is not just a philosophical exercise, it's an emotional necessity. Thinking about yourself isn't narcissism, it's an act of responsibility. It's asking with sincerity, what am I really doing here? What matters to me when no one is watching? It's easy to dismiss such questions as abstract, but they're the questions that separate a life of depth from one of distraction. In a world that monetizes your attention and feeds off your conformity, choosing to think for yourself is a radical act. Your inner compass doesn't shout, it doesn't market itself, it doesn't come with a notification. It waits patiently until you're ready to listen. The danger of not knowing yourself is that you become easy to manipulate. You're more likely to follow the latest trend, adopt someone else's priorities, and mistake movement for direction. But when you're in touch with your own values, you develop a quiet sturdiness. You're less shaken by other people's opinions because you've already done the hard work of forming your own. This isn't about arriving at certainty. It's about cultivating awareness. Your inner compass evolves as you do, revealing new truths with each season of life. The key is to keep listening, keep questioning, keep refining. When the external world grows loud, your ability to hear your own signal becomes your greatest advantage. To think about yourself is to become fluent in your own language. It's learning the difference between guilt and guidance, between pressure and purpose. It's noticing what gives you energy and what quietly drains you. These are subtle truths, but they form the architecture of a life well lived. The most powerful decisions often stem from the simplest questions. Is this me? Is this true? Does this align with who I am becoming? The answers won't always come quickly. But the act of asking, regularly, honestly, is itself a form of wisdom. The world may try to chart your course, but only you can steer the ship. Every day, without our noticing, thoughts enter our minds uninvited. A headline, a post, a conversation overheard, all become seeds. Some sprout into aspirations, others fester into anxieties. Few are truly our own, and yet we carry them as if they were born from within. To guard the gate of your mind is to become the discerning steward of what gets to shape your inner world. There's a subtle erosion that happens when we don't protect our mental space. We begin to measure ourselves against curated lives, filtered successes, artificial urgency. Slowly our desires bend toward conformity. Our ambitions drift from personal truth to public approval. If we're not vigilant, we wake up pursuing a life designed for someone else. We like to believe we are independent thinkers. But the architecture of influence is invisible and persistent. It shows up in the products we buy, the identities we adopt, the stories we tell ourselves about success. To resist this influence, we must cultivate awareness, not just of the world around us, but of what we allow to enter our consciousness. Social comparison, especially, is a silent thief. It steals joy, clarity, and focus. It turns life into a race with no finish line, where everyone seems ahead and no one feels enough. Guarding the mind means refusing to measure your journey by someone else's milestones. It means remembering that meaning is not universal, it's personal. We don't often question the origins of our motivations. Why do we chase prestige? Why do we crave visibility? Who told us what success should look like? These questions are uncomfortable, but necessary. Without them, we become vessels for inherited ambitions, living out scripts we never consciously chose. To think deeply about yourself requires mental stillness, and stillness requires space. That means setting boundaries with information, with people, with noise. It means choosing moments of solitude not as retreats, but as recalibrations. In silence, we begin to hear ourselves again. There is a kind of mental hygiene that's rarely discussed, filtering your inputs as carefully as you would guard your physical health. What books do you read? Who do you listen to? What ideas do you internalize without scrutiny? The quality of your thoughts is shaped by what you consume and what you tolerate. Resisting mental clutter is not a one-time act. It's a daily discipline. It's catching the impulse to compare before it roots itself. It's noticing the seductive pull of status before it hijacks your attention. It's a gentle, repeated return to your own center. It's also about reclaiming authorship over your inner narrative. Instead of letting the world write your story with its loud opinions and shifting values, you sit down with pen in hand. You ask, what do I want to stand for? What do I want to create? What matters when no one is watching? The gate of your mind is sacred. Treat it as such. Let in what aligns with your integrity. Question what demands your loyalty without earning your trust, and above all, protect the quiet, because it's there that your truest thoughts have a chance to emerge. In a world that idolizes constant connection, solitude can feel unnatural, almost threatening, but beneath its quiet surface lies a powerful ally. Solitude is not the absence of life, it's the fertile ground where life is processed, where noise dissolves and truth begins to emerge. It is not escape, it is engagement at a deeper level. We often mistake solitude for loneliness because we've grown unfamiliar with ourselves. We reach for distraction the moment silence enters the room. But in that silence is where the real work begins. It's where you start to notice what's been driving you, what's been draining you, and what you've been avoiding. Solitude lets you see. History shows us that some of the wisest thinkers were not necessarily the busiest, but the most reflective. They carved out space not for productivity, but for clarity. Reflection didn't slow them down. It made their next moves more precise. The hours alone were not empty, they were rich with insight. Stillness was not their weakness. It was their edge. In solitude, you encounter your own voice unfiltered. You hear your real fears without the noise of comparison. You recognize your true aspirations without external interference. This isn't always comfortable. The truth rarely is, but clarity never comes without first sitting in the discomfort of self-honesty. Solitude is also where priorities realign. It's where you remember what matters, not what's trending, not what's urgent, but what's essential. There's no audience in solitude, and that's the gift. You're not performing, you're not pleasing, you're just being, and from that place of authenticity, better decisions follow. When you allow yourself to be alone, not in reaction to the world, but in deliberate retreat from it, you reclaim mental sovereignty. You take back control over your attention, your emotions, your narrative. You become harder to sway because you've spent time understanding your own roots. Solitude doesn't mean withdrawing from people permanently. It means knowing when to step back so that your engagement with the world becomes more meaningful. It's the pause between notes that gives music its depth. A life without solitude risks becoming a blur of constant motion, without comprehension. The modern world doesn't reward stillness, which is why it's so crucial. If you're always moving, always reacting, you become a servant to momentum. But when you stop, when you truly reflect, you begin to act with intention. You move from reactivity to response, from noise to signal. There's a strategic brilliance in cultivating solitude. It's not romanticism, it's efficiency, because when your mind is clear, your energy is focused. You stop wasting time chasing the wrong goals. You become aligned, and alignment multiplies impact. Solitude sharpens the blade before you swing it. Ultimately, solitude is not a luxury. It's a discipline. It's where the most important conversations happen, the ones between you and your own soul. And if you can learn to befriend your own company, you'll never be truly alone. Instead, you'll carry within you the most reliable source of wisdom, yourself. There's a quiet power in turning your attention inward, not with judgment, but with genuine curiosity. We often study others in pursuit of wisdom, dissecting their habits, mindsets, and strategies. Yet we rarely pause to examine ourselves with the same depth. To be your own case study is to become a student of your own patterns, your own energy, your own life. Start by watching how you move through your days. What choices lift you up? What situations drain you? Where do you feel most alive, most useful, most at peace? These aren't philosophical questions. They are data points. When observed patiently, they reveal a personal blueprint, one no external guide can provide. Great investors look for patterns. They seek signals in the noise. In the same way, you can learn to track your own recurring behaviors. Those moments when you overreact, when you procrastinate, when you thrive. These aren't flaws or flukes, they are clues. They tell you where growth is waiting to happen. Self-awareness isn't static. It compounds just like capital. Each insight about yourself gives you leverage to make better decisions, to design your days with greater precision. But it requires effort. It demands that you step back regularly and ask not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Often, we're blind to our own emotional cycles. We push ourselves through burnout, tell ourselves stories that no longer serve us, or stay trapped in roles we've outgrown. Being your own case study means challenging those defaults. It's questioning what you've accepted as normal. It's noticing the disconnect between your values and your actions. There's a humility required here. Just as investors admit mistakes to refine their models, you must be willing to look at your own missteps, not with shame, but with interest. Every failed routine, every anxious decision, every missed opportunity is feedback. It's all part of the research. This work is deeply personal, but it's also deeply practical. The more you understand yourself, the more efficiently you can allocate your time, your energy, your attention. You stop guessing what you need and start knowing, and that shift, from assumption to understanding, is a turning point. You begin to operate from a place of alignment rather than ambition alone. You realize that self-optimization is not about squeezing more into your schedule. It's about removing what doesn't fit your nature. What remains is a life designed with intent, not inherited by default. The truth is, no one else is living your life. No one else feels what you feel or dreams what you dream. So why wouldn't you study the one subject you can know more intimately than anyone else? You are the experiment, the data, and the insight. The more you observe, the more there is to learn, and the beauty of this process is that it never ends. The deeper you look, the more nuanced you become. With time, self-awareness turns into self-trust. You start to move with more clarity, more purpose, more peace. And in that movement there's wisdom earned, not borrowed. Success for many is a story inherited rather than authored. It's a script handed down by culture, by family, by the subtle pressures of society. We chase titles, numbers, and symbols not because they speak to us, but because they're what others celebrate. But the true work begins when we ask, is this my definition or someone else's dream stitched into my skin? There is no universal formula for a meaningful life, yet we often act as if there is, comparing our paths to others, measuring our worth by metrics we never questioned. To define success on your own terms requires not only honesty but courage. It means saying no to applause when it doesn't align with your values. It means walking away from goals that impress others but leave you empty. Many people spend years climbing ladders, only to realize they're leaning against the wrong wall. They arrive at the summit, wealthy, recognized, respected, and quietly wonder why they still feel restless. That restlessness is not failure. It's the whisper of a truth long ignored. You were never meant to live someone else's version of enough. Defining success for yourself starts with one powerful shift. Stop asking what looks good and start asking what feels right. What activities nourish your spirit? What kind of work energizes you? What kind of relationships make you feel seen? These are not indulgent questions, they're strategic ones. They help you build a life that's sustainable from the inside out. You'll know you're on the right path when peace begins to replace pressure. Not because life is easier, but because it's yours. Success then becomes less about reaching a specific destination and more about moving in alignment with your deepest convictions. That's where real fulfillment hides, not in the spotlight, but in integrity. Of course, defining success personally often invites misunderstanding. You might be told you're thinking too small, or not ambitious enough. But the point of thinking for yourself is precisely that, it's for yourself. If your definition doesn't match the mainstream, it's not a problem. It's a sign you're awake. What's enough for one person may be overload for another, and what feels expansive to you might look unimpressive to someone else. That's the beauty of personal truth. It isn't a consensus. It's not a brand. It's a quiet, unshakable knowing that what you're building is right for you. To live by your own standard requires boundaries. You need to protect your space from opinions that don't understand your vision, not with defensiveness, but with confidence. Not everyone needs to approve. You're not building a life for their applause. You're building one you can live with day after day. Success at its highest level isn't just about what you achieve, it's about how you feel while achieving it. It's waking up with clarity, going to bed with peace, and knowing that your time is being spent in alignment with your values. That kind of life may not trend, but it endures, and in the quiet moments when the world isn't watching, you'll know you didn't settle, you didn't conform, you chose deliberately, and that, more than any accolade, is what real success looks like. There's a deep relief in finally allowing yourself to be unfinished. For so long, we're taught to polish the edges, to present strength without cracks, to pursue flawlessness as a virtue. But real growth begins when we let go of that illusion. When we look inward and say, "Here I am, messy, uncertain, human, and that's okay." Perfection is seductive because it promises safety. If you get everything right, no one will criticize you. If you appear flawless, maybe you'll be worthy. But that pursuit becomes a cage. It stifles risk, creativity, connection. The cost of trying to seem perfect is often the inability to be real. When we examine ourselves with honesty, what we find isn't always pleasant. We notice the inconsistencies, the ways we act against our own values, the fears we hide behind ambition, the insecurities disguised as confidence. But this seeing isn't failure. It's the first sign of self-respect. You're no longer avoiding the truth. You're inviting it in. Making peace with imperfection is not about lowering standards. It's about shifting them from external expectations to internal growth. It's recognizing that wisdom doesn't come from having all the answers, but from being willing to ask better questions, even if they're uncomfortable, especially when they're uncomfortable. You start to realize that vulnerability isn't a weakness in your system. It is the system. It's the engine of empathy, of connection, of real learning. The people who move through life with grace aren't those who have it all figured out. They're the ones who have learned to carry their imperfections with humility and humor. This doesn't mean becoming complacent or careless. It means acknowledging the gaps while still moving forward. It means accepting that self-improvement and self-acceptance are not opposites. They are partners. You can be a work in progress and worthy at the same time. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we begin to take more honest risks. We speak more freely. We admit what we don't know. We give others permission to do the same. In that shared imperfection, a different kind of confidence is born. One that's rooted not in image, but in authenticity. You also begin to treat yourself with more compassion. Instead of viewing mistakes as proof of inadequacy, you start to see them as part of the process. You become a kinder observer of your own life, more forgiving of your missteps, more patient with your path. What you eventually find is that the parts you once tried to hide, the flaws, the contradictions, the fears, are often the most instructive. They become your teachers. They show you where to pay attention, where the real work is, where your humanity lives, and from that place of acceptance, growth becomes less about fixing and more about unfolding. Less about chasing some ideal self, and more about becoming more deeply, courageously, and beautifully you. Time is the most finite resource you possess, yet it's the easiest to give away carelessly. Meetings that drain you, tasks that don't align, obligations accepted out of guilt. These are the hidden thieves. If you're not intentional, your time becomes a currency others spend for their benefit, not yours. And slowly, you lose the rhythm of your own life. Being intentional with your time starts with recognizing its true value, not in money, but in meaning. Every hour is an investment in something. The question is, are you investing in what truly matters to you, or just reacting to the next thing that demands your attention? Reclaiming your time is the first act of reclaiming your life. Busyness is not proof of purpose. In fact, it often hides the absence of it. We equate packed calendars with significance, but motion doesn't always mean momentum. Thinking about yourself means daring to pause, to ask, is this how I want to spend my limited days? Does this direction lead me somewhere I'll be proud to arrive? When your time is unguarded, your identity begins to blur. You say yes to everyone else's urgency and no to your own clarity. Over time, resentment grows, not just toward others, but toward yourself. Not because you're overworked, but because deep down, you know you've been unavailable to your own priorities. Being intentional doesn't require perfection or rigid structure. It requires awareness. You begin to see patterns, what energizes you, what exhausts you, where you feel alive, where you go numb. With that knowledge, you can start to design your days not around expectation, but alignment. This often means making hard choices, saying no more often, stepping away from distractions that masquerade as opportunity, protecting blocks of time not just for work, but for thinking, for creating, for simply being. Because some of your most valuable insights don't come from doing more. They come from stepping back. There's a discipline to this way of living. It means resisting the temptation to fill every gap, to default into busyness, to chase external validation. But the reward is clarity. When your schedule reflects your values, your life starts to reflect your purpose, and with each intentional choice, you become harder to knock off course. Time management, at its core, is self-respect in action. It's you saying, my needs matter, my vision matters, my peace matters, and that declaration changes everything, not just what you do, but how you feel while doing it. The world will always offer you another path, another race, another goal that sounds just a bit more urgent than your own. If you're not careful, you'll run at full speed toward a finish line that means nothing to you. You may even win, but you'll wonder as you cross it why it feels so hollow. So be deliberate. Be fierce with your time. Fill it with choices that reflect who you are, not who the world expects you to be. Because time isn't just what life is made of. It's how your legacy is shaped, one mindful hour at a time. Every day, without consent, your attention is negotiated by forces you can't see. The infinite scroll, the pings, the headlines, all finely tuned to hijack your focus, to bend your priorities towards someone else's purpose. In this environment, attention isn't just scattered, it's stolen. And what's at stake isn't just productivity, it's your sovereignty. Your attention is your life force. Where it goes, your time, energy, and identity follow. The quality of your thinking, your relationships, your work, they all depend on what you're choosing to notice and what you're choosing to ignore. To reclaim your attention is to reclaim the thread of your own narrative before it's rewritten by the loudest voice in the room. It's no accident that you feel pulled in 1,000 directions. Distraction has been engineered. The apps aren't just tools. They're traps, designed to trigger dopamine, exploit fear of missing out, and reward impulsivity. But here's the truth. What captures your attention controls your life, and what you pay attention to, you begin to believe in, to build around, to become. Thinking about yourself means disrupting this cycle. It means creating space not just to think, but to choose what deserves your focus. It's a conscious act, a refusal to be passively consumed by consumption. You don't owe your presence to every notification. You don't owe your energy to every opinion. You begin by observing what distracts you, not with guilt, but with curiosity. What draws you in when you're tired? What derails you when you're uncertain? These moments are windows into your patterns. And when you understand the pattern, you begin to regain control over the impulse. Reclaiming attention isn't about isolation. It's about discernment. It's knowing when to be connected and when to disconnect. When to be responsive and when to go silent. There's a sacred clarity that arises when you're no longer beholden to the noise. You start to hear your own thoughts again. Thoughts that haven't been shaped by headlines or likes or trends. This isn't easy. It requires boundaries that will seem strange to others, leaving messages unanswered, turning off devices, choosing boredom over constant stimulation. But these are not acts of withdrawal. They're acts of renewal. They're how you make room for deeper thought, for sharper focus, for actual creativity. Attention is also emotional. When your mind is hijacked, so is your mood. You start feeling things that aren't yours, anger borrowed from a comment section, anxiety induced by curated perfection. Reclaiming your attention means filtering what has emotional permission to enter your space. When you give yourself permission to focus, something profound happens. Your thoughts deepen, your values rise to the surface. Your life becomes less reactive, more deliberate. You stop flinching at every new demand and start asking, "Does this deserve me?" That question alone changes everything. In the end, thinking about yourself isn't a retreat from the world. It's a recalibration within it. You're not rejecting reality. You're choosing what part of it you'll engage with and on what terms. Your attention is the most precious thing you have. Guard it. Guide it. Give it only where your soul says yes. In a world obsessed with optimization, it's easy to forget that you're not a machine. You're not just a system to be upgraded, hacked, and streamlined. There's a soul in you, a depth that doesn't fit inside a planner or a metric. When you think about yourself, don't stop at productivity. Go further. Ask, what am I doing this for, and who am I becoming along the way? We often approach self-development like a checklist. Habits to install, routines to perfect, goals to crush. And yes, there's value in structure, but strategy without soul becomes sterile. It loses the very essence of what makes life rich. You become efficient, maybe even impressive, but hollow, and that's not a trade worth making. The soul doesn't speak in bullet points or dashboards. It asks bigger, quieter questions. Am I living in alignment with what I say matters? Have I made peace with the parts of me I'd rather ignore? Is this path expanding my humanity or shrinking it? These questions won't earn applause, but they are where the real transformation lies. You can build an empire and still feel empty inside it. That's the risk of mistaking achievement for meaning. Strategy tells you how to climb faster. The soul asks if the mountain is even yours to climb, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pause mid-ascent and reconsider everything. Self-reflection isn't a pause from progress, it is progress. But it's the kind that doesn't always show up on a resume. It's the courage to sit with discomfort, to explore the contradictions in yourself, to feel what you've been numbing with busyness. These are not soft pursuits. They require more strength than any sprint towards success. The culture rewards what's visible, but the soul lives in the invisible. It grows in the late night honesty, the unspoken prayer, the quiet journal entry that no one else sees. Thinking deeply about yourself is not a detour, it's the deeper route. It's the difference between chasing a life and inhabiting it. Depth also brings discernment. The more in touch you are with your own soul, the more resistant you become to shallow ambition. You stop needing to prove yourself constantly. You stop being seduced by applause. You realize that peace is a better compass than pressure. Of course, this kind of thinking doesn't come quickly. It resists efficiency. It asks you to slow down when everything screams hurry up. But in that slowness, you reconnect with what's real. You remember who you are underneath the roles, the labels, the expectations. Thinking about yourself deeply is not an escape from responsibility. It's the grounding that allows you to carry it well. You don't abandon your goals. You just root them in something more enduring than ego. You begin to act not just from skill, but from center. Because at the end of the day, no amount of strategy can fill a spiritual void. No checklist can answer the soul's deepest question, am I living in truth? And unless you're willing to ask that question, you may build a life that looks right, but feels entirely wrong. There's a quiet power in living congruently, a power that comes not from external validation, but from internal harmony. When your actions, your words, and your priorities all point in the same direction, you stop feeling like you're living in pieces. Instead, you live as a whole, a seamless expression of who you truly are. Too often, people live fragmented lives. They say one thing but do another. They chase goals that contradict their values. They make decisions based on what's expected, not what's authentic. This dissonance creates tension, a restless energy that wears down even the strongest resolve. It's exhausting because it demands constant self-negotiation. But when you think deeply about yourself, you begin to untangle that mess. You start to see where your life is out of sync. Maybe your job pays well, but drains your spirit. Maybe your relationships demand too much energy without giving any back. Maybe your habits don't match the person you want to be. Recognizing these gaps is the first step toward alignment. Alignment means making choices that honor your core values, not just convenience or obligation. It means speaking truth even when it's uncomfortable. It means prioritizing what truly matters over what looks good on paper. And it means being willing to say no, sometimes repeatedly, to the things that pull you off course. This isn't a one-time fix. Living congruently is a practice. It requires ongoing attention, reflection, and courage. There will be moments when you stray, moments when you fall back into old patterns. But the difference is that, over time, your inner compass grows stronger, guiding you back to your true path. The reward is profound. When your outer world matches your inner truth, you carry a confidence that isn't dependent on others' approval. You walk with integrity, and that integrity creates trust, not just with others, but with yourself. And trust is the foundation for peace and resilience. Living congruently also amplifies your impact. People sense when someone is whole and genuine. Your clarity of purpose becomes magnetic. You don't need to convince or explain. Your life becomes its own message. A quiet but powerful testimony to what's possible when you live true to yourself. In this harmony, you find freedom. Freedom from the noise of comparison. Freedom from the weight of pretense. Freedom from the internal conflict that comes when who you are and what you do are misaligned. That freedom allows you to show up fully, in work, in relationships, in every moment. Ultimately, living congruently means your life is not a series of compromises, but a coherent story. A story where your choices, words, and priorities are chapters written by the same hand, the hand of your deepest self, and that is a life not just well lived, but well loved. There's a profound peace that comes when you finally release the weight of what's beyond your control. You can strategize, plan, and hustle, yet some things remain outside your reach. Trying to control everything only fractures your focus and drains your energy. Letting go isn't surrendering to failure, it's an act of wisdom, an acknowledgement that some battles aren't yours to fight alone. Trusting that something greater is at work doesn't mean you stop doing the hard work. It means you do the work you can do with full commitment and then hand over the rest without bitterness or anxiety. When you do this, you free yourself from the tyranny of overthinking and relentless striving. You make space for clarity, for renewal, for unexpected solutions that only patience can reveal. Holding on to every worry, every outcome, every what-if, keeps your mind cluttered and your soul burdened. But when you step back and say, "Let God handle what I can't," you reclaim your mental and emotional bandwidth. This surrender sharpens your focus on what truly matters, the actions within your control, the character you're building, the relationships you're nurturing. This kind of trust is not passive. It's active faith, choosing to move forward with courage even when the path is uncertain. It's the humility to accept that your vision is limited, but the universe's wisdom is not. It's the strength to carry your responsibilities fully while embracing the mystery that some things unfold in their own time, in ways you may never predict. In the end, letting go is the ultimate act of self-respect. It says you value your peace more than your need to micromanage life. It says you recognize the limits of your power and honor the vastness beyond it. When you live like this, you're no longer trapped by fear or doubt. You become anchored in a quiet confidence that whatever happens, you will be okay. Because you've entrusted what you cannot change to a force greater than yourself.